Hawk with this. Number one, Justin Fields should start for the Pittsburgh Steelers. 2 preseason games in and 2 weeks till the season. I think it's obvious that Justin brings more good than bad in comparison to Russ. The sacks, I would disagree that they're all on Russ or all on the offensive line, excuse me. Here's my pushback, and the tape is going to say, Mike Tomlin, Coach Tomlin says that's not how we operate. I think that's the biggest issue right now. The Russ that we saw isn't operating this offense, and they're certainly not contenders with the Russ that we saw from this past weekend.
Bear with me.
Let me tell you something right now. The Steelers looked awful offensively. They looked absolutely awful. I'm very, very disgusted with what I saw. Let's get that out the way first. Secondly, I get where Shay is coming from in terms of starting Russell Wilson. That was certainly my thought process. I'm not sure how sold I am on that right now. I understand he's had the calf injury and stuff like that. I get that reality. But here's what really resonates with me. I'm thinking about the fact that you took those 3 sacks. You're still holding on the ball a little bit too long. Why are those things relevant? Because that's why Sean Payton couldn't stand them.
Let's be honest. The Pittsburgh Steelers are in a rough spot here, and there doesn't appear to be an easy way out. When they signed Russell Wilson and Justin Fields for pennies on the dollar, it appeared to be a genius solution to the Kenny Pickett-shaped problem of the 2023 season. Well, things haven't shaped up that way just yet. The offense has struggled immensely this preseason, not helped by a woeful offensive line. The one occasional bright spark? Justin Fields. He certainly has his flaws, but boy does Fields offer occasional glimmers of hope and upside that simply do not exist with his older teammate. It's time to admit it. Justin Fields may have just sent Russell Wilson into retirement. Not all winning records are made equal. In 2023, the Steelers somehow produced a 10-7 record that would suggest all is good in the Steel City. Instead, that record is a remarkable testament to Tomlin's ability as head coach and the defense. That good record completely glosses over a franchise where very little seemed to actually work. The quarterback was broken, the offensive line couldn't block, and players were regularly bickering. Even the off-field product was underperforming, with the NFL Players Association report card sliding the Steelers in at 28th, criticizing them for their nutrition, travel, and facilities. Having cut ties with their failed quarterback, Kenny Pickett, the Steelers now have turned to Russell Wilson and Justin Fields to save the day. Surely, this top-notch defense and Mike Tomlin as head coach, one of them would be able to provide the average level of quarterback play required to make this team relevant. Well, it's certainly been far from smooth sailing so far. Russell Wilson has been the man penciled into the starting role for several months now, but with his injury at the beginning of the preseason came at a bad time for him. It allowed Justin Fields to get all the reps with the ones, and it is never good to open the door to someone who offers that dreaded thing called upside. Upside and potential can be the killer of hopes and dreams, but as things stand after the 2024 season, that might be all the Steelers can bank on. Russell Wilson's injury kept him out of Week 1 of the preseason, but he got his first chance to play in Week 2. He celebrated by showing us some of vintage Russell Wilson. No, not the sexy deep balls, bit of his pass game, but the holding onto the ball and taking sacks a bit. I'll admit that the offensive line was laughable in that game, but it was still so reminiscent of what we have come to expect from Russ in recent years. When looking at sacks taken over the last 4 years, Russell Wilson's 180 are a whopping 32 more than Joe Burrow, who's in second place. On that list, there are 3 people in the 140s, and then no one else before you get to the man on top. Russell Wilson with 180 sacks, that is seriously a big number, and seriously a big concern from what we are expecting from the Steelers' offensive line, and what we have seen from them in the preseason so far. Again, I am very aware that Broderick Jones got absolutely annihilated in that game, and there weren't a lot of options for Russ, but he was definitely to blame for at least one of the sacks. Wilson got 5 drives in that game, yielding those 3 sacks in just 34 yards. Oh, and 0 points. Thanks Chris Boswell for missing the field goal to really add insult to injury. It was messy and miserable, and despite there being a lot of pressure, Wilson contributed to the pain. He helped on to the ball and repeatedly took the wrong option. He looked indecisive and out of answers. Remember, this isn't new. This is what caused the Broncos to eat $85 million of dead cap. In reality, it's not hard to understand. This offensive line is not good, and that is a recipe for disaster for a 35-year-old Russell Wilson. It's probably a recipe for disaster for Justin Fields as well, but at least Fields has something special. Yes, Fields will miss the right passes from time to time and get confused by defenses, but when that pocket collapses, there might not be a single player in the NFL who can escape and make the defense pay like Fields can. He genuinely might be one of the best pure rushing quarterbacks in the entire NFL, and that single piece of upside is surely enough to send Russell Wilson to the bench.
Right? Justin Fields had the same issues. He found ways to make it happen. Right? He at least got the ball moving, got some ran a little bit, did all of that. So, yeah, I mean, again, it didn't blow you away, and I know Pittsburgh's trying to keep it simple, but as it stands here right now and looks, and again, I don't want to overjudge it. It's still Russell Wilson's first game here as a Steeler and all that, but I'm a little bit more like play Justin Fields. I just think Justin Fields is going to lay it on the line to win the football game. Yeah, he's not perfect throwing the ball, but he's good enough that way. And then his playmaking ability with his legs, his ability to run on game plan design quarterback runs, I just think fits Pittsburgh and what they want to do.
Justin, one of them has the ability to take bad stuff and turn it into good.
Yeah.
That's why I think this is a very easy process or decision for Coach Tomlin. Justin's not going to be perfect, and if you expect him to be, that's on you. But I do know that he could take more bad and turn it into good.
Dano sums it up perfectly here. We know the quarterbacks are going to be in bad situations, so why not at least pay the guy and play the guy who can actually produce the magic from those rough situations? Fields was taken 11th overall in 2021, and while it would be silly to pretend that he might actually become suddenly something good on that first round upside, he might at least produce some magic moments and develop. He is still young, and there is a much higher chance that he will show improvement than Russell Wilson, and if Fields does show improvements, then who knows, maybe he could be the starter again next year, or maybe you ship him off to someone else and get some value back as you continue your hunt for the primary guy. These first round quarterbacks have a funny way of retaining value. Someone is always going to think that they can be the guy to fix them. Just look at how many chances Sam Darnold has had. More importantly though, maybe Fields does actually start getting fixed in Pittsburgh with a new coaching staff. We already know that Arthur Smith is going to want to prioritize the run, which could suit Fields well, not only as a rusher himself, but also in the play-action passing game and on bootlegs. Fields had a 76.4 PFF passing grade on play-action throws in 2023. Overall, he achieved a PFF grade of 74.6. Passing for 2,562 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. Much of this production went to DJ Moore, who posted a career-high 1,364-yard, 8-touchdown season, earning himself a lucrative extension. When Justin does see the right pass, he can absolutely fire it there, and you can expect him to be much more aggressive at targeting downfield than Wilson. And I will admit, this won't always be pretty, and the point about Russell Wilson taking sacks can be applied to Justin Fields as well. Fields' 99 sacks taken over the last 2 yards are just one behind Russell Wilson's 100, but with Fields you at least feel like there is some talent to work with and the ultimate X factor of his rushing ability. Okay, we have spoken a lot about the offensive line, so it's probably worth digging into them a little bit as well as the rest of the supporting cast. The Steelers entered the 2024 draft knowing that the offensive line was an issue, picking tackle Troy Fautanu in the first round and center Zach Frazier in the second. Good, that was the right thing to do. Unfortunately, Fautanu is struggling with a bit of a back issue at the moment, but at least Frazier looked good when coming in to replace Nate Herbig, who has since suffered a season-ending injury. Both players will experience rookie struggles this year, but should at least round into solid players next year and beyond. The concerning thing for Steelers fans is how bad Broderick Jones looked in the preseason. He was bullied against the Bills, which is not a good sign given he was the team's first-round pick last year. He simply needs to develop into a solid starter if Pittsburgh is to stand a chance at protecting their quarterback this year. From a playmaker perspective, Deontay Johnson is no longer on the team. He has been shipped off to help Bryce Young revive his career, leaving George Pickens as the alpha. Pickens certainly flashed some stunning tape in 2023, but still has to prove that he has the consistency to be a week in, week out number one guy. Pat Freiermuth is the next most enticing option for the quarterback, with a collection of Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson, and rookie Roman Wilson filling in the other pass-catching roles. It isn't exactly the most desirable group of pass catchers for two quarterbacks looking to revive their careers, but they will at least benefit from a good run game, so long as the O-line can do their bit. Running backs Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren are expected to do most of the heavy lifting on offense now that Art Smith is in-house as OC. Najee has collected 1,000 yards in each of his first 3 seasons in the NFL without really exciting too many people, whereas Warren adds the explosiveness as both a rusher and a passer. Unfortunately, he has just picked up a soft tissue injury, which is absolutely not what you want to hear for a running back entering the season. His absence could genuinely be a huge issue for this offense, especially if Pickens doesn't take a step forward as the number 1 guy. And when you add in the quarterback and offensive line issues, this doesn't really feel like a team that is ready to compete. Therefore, when taking a look at who he wants to run his offense, Mike Tomlin needs to consider the overall outlook for Pittsburgh and their position in the AFC North and the conference in general. What's the goal in 2024? Does Tomlin really think that this team has a shot? Or maybe he just wants to ensure he snags another winning record. In the division, Baltimore is looking strong as ever with 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson under center, and a future Hall of Fame running back in Derrick Henry alongside him. They have question marks along the O-line, and it will be interesting to see how the defense adjusts to life without Mike McDonald. But they will be expecting to challenge for a Super Bowl this year. Then you have the Cincinnati Bengals, who are entering the season relatively under the radar, but are nonetheless raring to go. Burrow has declared he is fit for Week 1, and there won't be many defenses who can challenge him. Jamar Chase and a motivated T. Higgins, who is essentially auditioning for his next job this season. Even if the Browns look in a better spot than Pittsburgh, they only need above-average quarterback play from Deshaun Watson to be a danger. Their O-line is amongst the best in the league, and their defense as a whole might be one of the very best. That leaves Pittsburgh in last place in most people's preseason estimations. Even if they manage to make the playoffs, they will then face a long list of other AFC powerhouses who are much better suited to winning games. They will be heavy underdogs against Miami, the New York Jets, Houston Texans, and Buffalo Bills. So with all of that in mind, are the Steelers really expecting to compete this year with their dismal offensive line, shallow wide receiver room, and questionable quarterback room? No, they aren't, or they really shouldn't be. Therefore, starting Fields is the obvious choice. He will have his head-scratching and frustrating moments, but you can bet Wilson will have his as well. At least with Justin Fields, there will be more entertaining moments, and you are opening the door to him potentially becoming a serviceable passer, which would make him a far more interesting prospect. The one saving grace for this team, or at least the one thing preventing them from being bad enough to getting a good draft pick, depending upon how you see it, is the defense. There's only one way you can squeak out a 10-win season despite having the 28th worst passing offense, and that's by having a top-tier defense. The 19 points given up per game by Steelers last year was 6th best in the NFL last year. TJ Watt was a missile off the edge again, collecting a very handy 19 sacks, which led the league. He was followed up by Alex Highsmith's 7 sacks, forming one heck of a formidable pass-rushing duo. They work very well with the big boys in the middle, and Cam Hayward, Kenu Benton, and Larry Ogunjobi. They will be supported nicely by the new addition of Patrick Queen at linebacker. Queen has made the switch to the black and gold after spending the last few years with their division rivals, the Baltimore Ravens. He is all around a great linebacker at the heart of the defense who will be an invaluable mentor to new rookie Peyton Wilson. In the secondary, Minkah Fitzpatrick is joined by Deshaun Elliott to create one of the league's better safety duos, and Joey Porter Jr. leads the cornerbacks. The overall success of the group will depend on Porter's development as a sophomore, but there is definitely talent to work with. Overall, it is a good defense with plenty of returning stars and some useful additions. Last year, they managed to salvage a remarkable 10-win season despite some of the worst offensive play in the NFL. This year, can the offense be good enough to support this defense, or will TJ Watt's unit essentially be wasted again, resulting in another disappointing finish and no good draft pick to soften the blow? Potentially, the best way to sum things up for the Steelers over the past few years came from running back Najee Harris. Having just lost to the Cleveland Browns in November, Najee Harris told CBS, "You can look at it 2 ways. You can look at the record and say, okay, we're still good right now, or you can look at the record and be like, if we keep playing this type of football, how long is that going to last?" I look at it like, how long is that going to last? This season has a very similar feel to it already. The one thing that could potentially spice things up is Justin Fields being named a starter. Do you agree? Let me know in the comment section.